As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over the sprawling cityscape of New Eden, Commander Alara Knox stood on the balcony of the colony's command center, her eyes scanning the tranquil streets below. Her posture, stiff with the weight of command, belied the serene view. In the quiet of the evening, the distant laughter of children playing in the hydroponic gardens was a sharp contrast to the storm of anxiety brewing in her chest. Tomorrow, she would lead the quarterly security drill, a routine necessity that gnawed at her, a stark reminder of the ever-present threat lurking beyond their peaceful existence. New Eden, a jewel of humanity's celestial crown, thrived under a canopy of engineered atmospheres and between the tendrils of cosmic trade routes. The colony was a harmonious blend of earthborn and alien cultures, a testament to the potential of peace in the vastness of space. Skyscrapers shimmered with bioluminescent algae, streets buzzed with hover vehicles, and marketplaces were vibrant with alien spices and human laughter. Commander Knox, with her sharp gaze and tightly pulled-back hair, was a familiar figure to the colony's inhabitants. Having risen through the ranks of the Earth Alliance with a blend of grit and grace, she was the colony's unwavering protector, a role she embraced with a solemn dedication born from loss. Her family had perished in a colonial skirmish when she was just a cadet, a memory that fueled her commitment to safeguarding New Eden from a similar fate. As night fully embraced the colony, Alara retreated from the balcony to the war room, where holographic maps and live feeds painted a picture of cosmic tranquility. But the calm was deceptive, a fragile veil that could be torn apart at any moment by the chaos of war. Her crew, a diverse group of humans and allied aliens, shared her dedication, their faces a mosaic of determination and the burden of foresight. The peace of the evening was abruptly shattered by an urgent communiqué from an outpost on the fringes of the sector. The message was crackled and fraught with panic. An unidentified fleet was approaching, their signatures masked, their intentions unknown but implied by their stealth and speed. Alara's heart raced, her worst fears seemed to manifest from the shadows of the unknown. With the colony's safety hanging in the balance, Alara issued swift orders, her voice calm but underlined with urgency. The air in the command center thickened with tension, as officers scrambled to their stations, the sounds of hurried footsteps and hushed communications blending into a cacophony of war preparation. In the deepening gloom of her command center, lit only by the glow of tactical displays, Alara faced the looming threat with a stoic resolve. But beneath her composed exterior, a tempest of emotions raged, fear for her people, anger at the interruption of peace, and a resolute desire to protect her home at all costs. Tonight, New Eden's fate hung in a delicate balance, and its shield was a woman haunted by the past, yet unflinching in the face of the future. As the first alarms wailed, slicing through the night, Alara steeled herself against the coming storm. This was her duty, her burden, and she would meet it head-on. The dawn on New Eden was shrouded in urgency and despair, the morning light tainted by the smoldering remains of what had been tranquil living quarters just hours before. As the sun cast long shadows over the debris, Commander Alara Knox surveyed the aftermath of the night's attack. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning electronics and charred metal, a pungent reminder of the night's horror. The once vibrant streets of New Eden were now eerily silent, punctuated only by the occasional distant echo of emergency crews at work. Inside the colony's command center, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Alara stood before a holographic display, flanked by her senior officers and strategic advisors, projecting the strength and calm needed to fortify the spirits of those around her. Her face, usually composed and stoic, betrayed a flicker of sorrow for the lives lost, quickly masked by a sharpened focus on retaliation. "We have suffered an unprecedented attack," Alara began, her voice cutting through the low murmur of the room. "But we are not beaten, nor will we cower. We will respond with the full might of our forces." Her words were met with nods of approval and determined looks from her crew, their resolve hardened by her unwavering leadership. The plan was audacious, a counterattack involving 700,000 warships, each one now being summoned from across human territories, with a haste that spoke of the urgency of their mission. The logistics were a nightmare, the risks colossal, but the alternative, a retreat into fear, was unthinkable. As the fleet's preparation kicked into high gear, Alara's attention turned to the emotional toll the night's events had taken on her crew. She walked through the command center, stopping to speak with her officers and crew members, each conversation a blend of empathy and encouragement. She understood that behind the stoicism needed for warfare lay profound grief and fear, and she addressed it head-on. "Commander, the fleet mobilization is 76% complete," reported Lieutenant Harrow, a young but brilliant strategist whose rapid rise through the ranks had been personally overseen by Alara. "Our allies, the Tavari, have pledged their support. Their fleet will meet us at the rally point outside the Janssen Cloud." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Alara replied, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Make sure the crews get some rest in shifts. We'll need everyone at their best." Outside, the loading docks were a frenzy of activity. Warships, large and small, were being outfitted with the latest armaments and defense systems. Ground crews worked tirelessly, fueling engines and loading supply chains, their movements a ballet of precision under pressure. The emotional scene at the departure gates was palpable, as crew members bid hurried farewells to their families. Alara watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She knew many might not return, and the weight of every life under her command was a burden she carried deep within her. As the final ships were prepared to leave, Alara convened a last-minute briefing with her command staff. The walls of the strategy room seemed to close in as the gravity of their mission loomed large. Maps and enemy positions were displayed, potential strategies debated, and contingencies planned. Alara ended the meeting with a call to arms that resonated deeply with everyone present. "This is more than retribution. It's a statement to the galaxy that humanity will not tolerate aggression. We stand united, and we fight not just for New Eden, but for all human colonies. Let's show them the strength of our resolve." With the fleet assembled, and the course set, the armada of warships began their departure from New Eden, their engines igniting in unison, a roaring testament to human defiance and the unbreakable will to fight back. As the last ship cleared the dock, Alara turned to gaze one final time at the smoldering remains of the colony. The pain of loss was now a fuel for the fire burning within her. With a deep breath, she boarded her flagship, the resolve in her step as firm as the metal decks below. The fleet set off, warping into the star-studded expanse of space, carrying with them the hopes and fears of a civilization at war. As the stars blurred into lines of light, Alara's thoughts were clear. They would strike hard and without mercy. The time for mourning would come later. Now was the time for action. Deep within the cold, dark expanse of space, far from the now scorched soils of New Eden, the formidable figure of Rex loomed over a vast metallic command deck. The warlord of the Skrull Empire, wrapped in armor that shimmered like the surface of a starless night, surveyed his domain with predatory eyes. His command ship, the Dread Sovereign, was a fortress of sinister beauty, bristling with the latest in alien warfare technology. Around him, the Skrull fleet, a menacing assembly of battleships that resembled great predatory beasts of the void, floated in the quiet of space, awaiting their leader's next command. Vrex's features, marked by the jagged scars of countless battles, were set in a sneer as he received reports from his lieutenants. His voice, a guttural rumble, filled the room as he addressed his assembly. The humans' response will be swift. They are an emotional species, driven by their short-sighted desires for peace and stability. They will come, and when they do, we will be ready to crush them. His strategic advisor, a lean Skrull named Ithrex, approached with a holographic display of the galaxy. Points of light indicated Skrull forces, and a blinking light showed the last known location of the human fleet. "Warlord, our spies report a massive mobilization. The humans have called upon their entire armada. They're not just retaliating. They aim to make a stand." "Good," Vrex growled, his eyes gleaming with a ruthless glow. Let them bring their warships. We will turn their pride to ashes, and their hope to despair. Prepare the gravity well generators. We'll trap them the moment they emerge from warp. The deck hummed with activity as orders were relayed. Vrex's plan was devious. The gravity well generators were capable of disrupting warp fields, a trap that would force the human fleet out of hyperspace prematurely, disoriented and vulnerable. As the final preparations were made, Vrex retired to his private chamber, a space adorned with trophies from conquered worlds, each a grim testament to his victories. Here Vrex's thoughts turned inward. His hatred for humanity was not just strategic, it was personal. Years ago, a human fleet had thwarted a Skrull invasion, costing him a critical outpost and a humiliating defeat. That loss had festered, growing into a seething promise of vengeance. Now, as he gazed out at the stars, his reflection ghostly in the thick glass of his viewport, Vrex's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden urgent communication. Warlord, the human fleet has been spotted. They are advancing faster than anticipated. With a sneer of anticipation, Vrex returned to the command deck. He stood before his crew, a towering figure of command. This battle will be remembered as the moment when humanity's light was extinguished by the darkness of the Skrull. We will show no mercy, for none was shown to us. Prepare for battle. The mood among the Skrull was electrifying, a mix of ferocity and fervor. They were warriors, bred for conflict, their lives defined by the strict codes of their militaristic culture. As the fleet moved into formation, the vast machinery of war churned with lethal precision. Meanwhile, hidden behind a veil of stealth technology, Vrex's elite guard prepared for a secret mission. These were not mere soldiers. They were the finest warriors of the Skrull, tasked with a covert operation that could turn the tide of the war in a stroke, a direct strike aimed at the heart of the human command. As the human fleet drew closer, unaware of the full extent of the trap laid out for them, Vrex watched, his expression unreadable. The coming battle would be fierce, and the galaxy would watch, holding its breath, as two civilizations clashed in a war that would carve its scars deep into the annals of cosmic history. The vast emptiness of space between the galaxies was rarely so alive with activity. Human warships, a mighty armada composed of 700,000 vessels ranging from nimble frigates to colossal dreadnoughts, streamed through the starlit expanse like a swarm of meteorites, each ship bristling with weaponry and pulsing with the determination of its crew. Commander Alara Nox, aboard her flagship, the Sovereign Hope, surveyed the holographic displays that floated before her, each screen a cascade of data and strategic projections. The atmosphere aboard the flagship was one of controlled urgency. Alara's command was absolute, her presence a calm center in the storm of war preparations. Her eyes, hardened by the weight of command and the scars of past losses, moved meticulously over the fleet's formation as they approached the Janssen Cloud, a notorious expanse known for its dense, sensor-scrambling nebulae. Adjust formation, tighten the ranks around the carriers. I don't want any gaps Vrex can exploit, Alara ordered, her voice steady over the comm. Lieutenant Harrow responded from his station. Formation adjustments underway, Commander. All ships report ready status. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. Despite the readiness of her fleet, Alara's mind was fraught with the strategic dilemma that lay ahead. Vrex was cunning, known for his ruthless tactics, and she had no illusions about the trap he might have set. Her thoughts were briefly interrupted by a specialist at the sensor hub. Commander, we're detecting abnormal gravitational fluctuations ahead. It's possible these are the precursors to Vrex's trap. Keep a close eye on it. Inform me of any changes immediately, she replied, turning her attention back to the tactical plot. The fleet continued its advance, the shadow of the Janssen Cloud looming ever larger as they neared. It was here that Alara planned to make a stand, using the cloud's dense gases as cover to mitigate the enemy's long-range sensors, a double-edged sword that would limit both sides strategically. Meanwhile, below deck, the mood among the crew was a mix of grim determination and anxious resolve. They had all seen the images of New Eden's destruction, and each crew member carried the weight of that loss in their heart. In the mess halls, whispered conversations turned over the possibilities of the coming battle, with veterans sharing words of encouragement with the younger soldiers. As the fleet entered the outer edges of the Janssen cloud, a sudden sharp alert rang out through the Sovereign Hope. "Commander, the gravitational fluctuations are spiking. It's a trap," the specialist called out. In an instant the fleet's advance turned chaotic as hundreds of ships were caught in the grip of a massive gravity well, their formations disrupted, and their paths altered. The trap had been sprung, and Alara's fleet was now scattered, vulnerable to attack. "Signal all ships. Initiate emergency protocols. Delta and Epsilon, regroup at rally point Sigma. We need to break free from this gravity well," Alara commanded, her voice a beacon of urgency. Across the fleet, engines roared to life, pushing against the invisible force that sought to crush them. The Sovereign Hope, its engines glowing hot, managed to break free from the well's grasp, leading by example as other ships followed, struggling against the relentless pull. As the fleet regrouped, a new threat emerged from the nebula. A phalanx of Skrull warships, sleek and deadly, emerged, weapons charging. The battle was imminent, and Alara knew that the next few hours would decide the fate of her fleet, and perhaps the future of humanity. "Prepare all hands for combat. This is it," Alara announced over the ship-wide intercom, her voice resolute. "Remember why we're here. For New Eden, for humanity." The Sovereign Hope and its sister ships, now aligned and ready, faced the emerging Skrull fleet. As the first volleys of plasma fire lit up the nebula, the great battle for revenge and survival began in earnest. The vast canvas of space, once silent and serene, now roared with the cacophony of war. The battle, ignited within the confines of the Janssen cloud, became a maelstrom of flashing lasers and explosive ordnance. Commander Alara Nox, at the helm of the Sovereign Hope, directed her fleet with a conductor's precision, orchestrating a symphony of strategic assaults against the encroaching Skrull forces. Her eyes, reflecting the cold light of battle screens, remained sharply focused, her mind calculating every possible outcome with rapid precision. In the swirling fog of the nebula, visibility was limited, and sensors were unreliable. Each captain relied heavily on instinct, and the brief windows of clarity when the enemy ships loomed out of the murky darkness. The human fleet, though initially caught off guard by the gravity wells, had regained formation, their ships slicing through the cloud in tight, disciplined units. "Focus fire on their command ships. Target the engines and weapons systems," Alara commanded through the tactical net, her voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. On the Skrull side, Warlord Vrex watched from the bridge of the Dread Sovereign, his expression twisted into a grimace of fury as he observed the resilience of the human fleet. He had anticipated an easier victory, underestimating the strategic genius of Commander Nox and the indomitable spirit of her officers. In response, he unleashed his elite guard, the Black Talons, into the fray, a fleet of swift, heavily armed cruisers designed for deep penetration and sabotage. The space between the two clashing armadas became a deadly zone of energy blasts and debris. Ships on both sides maneuvered aggressively, dodging incoming fire and countering with devastating barrages. The human destroyers, agile and fierce, darted forward, their torpedoes streaking through space to find their marks on Skrull cruisers, which erupted into brilliant fiery blooms. Amidst the chaos, a daring maneuver by the Skrull attempted to flank the human fleet. Alara, anticipating this move, had reserved a squadron of frigates, the Phantom Wing, for just such a counter. As the Skrull ships closed in, the Phantoms swept in from behind, their stealth technology masking their approach until the last possible moment. "Phantom Wing, execute Omega maneuver now." Alara's command was timed to perfection. The Phantoms, materializing like specters from the nebula, unleashed a torrent of fire that caught the Skrull flankers off guard, disrupting their formation and forcing them into a defensive retreat. Throughout the hours of combat, the human fleet gradually gained the upper hand, their coordinated strategies and heroic efforts turning the tide. Alara herself took a moment to engage directly with Vrex via a secure channel, a face-off between two formidable leaders. "Vrex, this ends now," Alara declared, her gaze unyielding as the warlord's image flickered on her screen. "Human, your spirit is commendable, but this is far from over." Vrex snarled, his voice a harsh echo in the command center of the Sovereign Hope. "We will see whose resolve lasts longer," Alara retorted, cutting the transmission abruptly, her focus returning to the battle. As the skirmishes continued, the Skrull forces began to falter under the relentless assault of the human fleet. Their numbers dwindling, their formations broken, Vrex was forced to call for a strategic withdrawal, his ships disappearing back into the depths of space from which they had come. Exhausted yet victorious, Alara allowed herself a brief sigh of relief as the last of the enemy ships retreated. The battle was won, but the war was not over. She knew that Vrex would return, likely with a vengeance. However, today's victory was a testament to human courage and tactical brilliance, a message to the universe that humanity would not stand idly by in the face of tyranny. As the remnants of the fleet regrouped and the injured were tended to, Alara looked out into the void, her thoughts on the fallen and the future. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but for now they had earned a moment of respite, a moment to mourn, to heal and to prepare for whatever came next. The aftermath of the fierce battle left the void of space strewn with the debris of Skrull and human warships alike. The stars, passive witnesses to the conflict, now watched over a somber scene. Aboard the Sovereign Hope, Commander Alara Knox stood at the observation deck, her eyes scanning the cold, scattered remains. Each piece of debris, a testament to sacrifice, floated silently, painting a grim tableau of the cost of war. The air inside the flagship was thick with a cocktail of relief and mourning. Alara's crew, battle-weary yet buoyed by their hard-fought victory, attended to their duties with a quiet efficiency. In the medical bays, doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, tending to the wounded, their faces etched with the fatigue of endless hours. The soft beeps of medical equipment and the low murmur of voices provided a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the ship outside. Alara turned away from the window, her mind heavy with the responsibility of leadership. The victory was crucial, but it had come at a high price. She made her way to the communications room, where she prepared to address the fleet and the colonies. The message would be broadcast across human-controlled space, a beacon of both the victory and the remembrance of those lost. "Today we stood against the darkness of tyranny, and prevailed," Alara began, her voice resonating through countless ships and homes. "But our celebration is tempered by our grief for the brave souls we have lost. Let their sacrifice be a reminder of the cost of freedom, and let their courage inspire us to endure and to prevail." As the message ended, plans were already underway for the next phase of their struggle. The Skrull threat remained, and Vrex, though beaten, was not destroyed. Alara met with her senior staff, outlining the need for vigilance and the continuation of their defensive efforts. The meeting was long and filled with strategic debate, charting out potential responses to any future Skrull aggressions. Meanwhile, on the colonies, the news of the battle's outcome sparked a mixture of celebration and solemn remembrance. Memorials were held on dozens of worlds, services that honored the fallen and celebrated the indomitable spirit of those who had defended them. Lights dimmed across cities, as citizens observed moments of silence, their thoughts on the lost and their hopes for a peaceful future. In the following days, Alara took personal trips to visit several of the most affected ships and stations. Her presence was a comfort to her crew, and civilians alike, a leader who shared in their trials and triumphs. She listened to their stories, shared in their tears, and reinforced their resolve. The reconstruction of the damaged fleet and the fortification of vulnerable colonies began. Ships were repaired and rebuilt, stronger and more resilient. Technologies were advanced, strategies refined, and alliances strengthened. Humanity, united by their shared trials, looked to the future with a cautious optimism. As Alara watched the progress, her thoughts often drifted back to New Eden, to the loss that had ignited the fierce response they had so capably delivered. She vowed to ensure that such a tragedy would never befall another human colony. Finally, standing once again at the observation deck, Alara looked out into the vastness of space. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, the darkness a little less oppressive. The war was not over, and peace was still a distant dream, but they had proven their strength and their willingness to fight for their future. Alara whispered to the void, "For those we lost, for those we can yet save."